Hi, everyone. Welcome to the House Democratic Caucus. I'm Lori Houghton, and I represent Essex Junction. Last week, promised last week, we're going to do this. Get out of here. So we have a lot on our agenda today. I'll just do a rundown so you know the order. S230, 193, education, yield, will probably go together. 278, 606, and 71. Don't hold me to that order because I'm not sure I did it, but I'm going to remember it. So we're going to start with 230 and Representative Krasnow.
Hello, Representative Krasnow, Chittenden 9, South Burlington. I'm here to talk about S230. If folks remember last week, which feels like 8 years ago, there was an omnibus labor bill on the House floor that had a roll call, and the Republican caucus, except for I believe one person, voted no. And so here's the deal. Basically, this time of year, this stuff happens. We've decided after talking to different folks in the administration and members of the minority caucus that we will be doing an amendment that takes out a piece that was not favored by those folks. And that amendment will be offered by myself, my amazing chair, and Vice Chair Bartley. So the three of us will offer that amendment, and we'll be putting that, we're trying to put that amendment onto the CTE bill, which is 313. And that will be up this afternoon, we believe. Potentially. And so that is the move that we're going to do. So we're going to take out the piece, should I say the piece?
Yeah.
The piece that was the sticky problem was it wasn't in our original bill that we had, but the at the last minute in the Senate Committee of Housing and Economic Development, they put in a piece that the VSCA had requested about solicitation in DOC parking lots. So that wasn't something we really discussed in our committee, but they put that in there at the last minute. And in our committee, there was kind of a split on whether or not to continue with that. But we were concerned, some of us, our chair was concerned that if we didn't concur, then it might get stuck. So anyways, that's the piece that the administration is not happy with. They have said that they're supportive of the other pieces in the bill. We've already all voted for it in our committee unanimously. It was reported on the House floor originally by Republicans, so it's all good, but that one piece. So we're gonna take that out. And the amendment will be the same that was in our original bill, just without that piece and tacked on to 313. Any questions? Oh, sorry, yes.
I just want to add real quick. So we did talk to with the VSEA, and they are fine with us removing the section. I think it's section 3. It specifically is the solicitation at correctional facilities. And then just as a reminder, 230 is really an important bill because it has healthcare non-compete in it. So it's really important that we get this across to help our healthcare.
Yeah, no, it is. And there's a lot of other great things in the bill. Selfishly, 2 of my bills are jammed in there that are important. One to help folks, victims of domestic violence, and another couple technical fixes. So it's a really important bill that we don't want to just drop. So happy. And yes, I have met with the SCI and other folks who are invested, and they say it's all good. So any questions? Yes.
Karen's coming.
Thank you, Rob under Bennington 4. Just a quick question. What does that mean, solicitation at DOC parking lots? Thanks.
Yeah, of course, that's true. That's kind of vague. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Basically, so DOC folk, yeah, no, of course. So DOC folks are in a bargaining unit with the VSCA. They collectively bargain and have a contract with VSCA as their union. However, there are other unions out in the world that want to have them join their union. So we've heard from different people that in the parking lot at DOC, people have been approached, like employees have been approached by other unions to join their union. And so that's a thing that happens because you want to, you know, about card check.
We're not gonna go.
Oh, we're not good, too much. It's not union 101 right now. Anyway,
Coming out anyway.
yeah. Anyway, so, but yes, that was the original impetus of the bill, was to stop that from happening. But the administration and the unions will be meeting. It doesn't need to be legislated, but happy to talk more anytime about, no, okay.
I think we're good. Any other questions?
Yes.
Peter on, house education. 313 is a very non-controversial bill about having the AOE who wants to work on CTE. This is obviously not germane, but there will be rule suspension for that to be, to take place, but just 313, which is the underlying bill, but it's actually going to be presented by Commerce. It's going to be amended by, the Education Committee, and I think Ways and Means and Approach may have to weigh in on it as well, so it's going to be a somewhat convoluted process.
Great.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you, Chair Conlon and Chair Marcotte and Edie and everyone and Speaker Krinsky for working on this and finding a path forward for this important bill that we want moved. So thank you so much.
Great. All right.
On to the.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
right.
need to give up the
I
microphone.
know, it's so much fun on the microphone.
Okay, so next we are going to talk about S-193 with Chair Lalonde and Chair Evans.
Hello. Hoping to have a straw poll later this morning on an amendment to 193 that we've been trying to set up so that the Senate can concur with this. We really thought we were seeing ourselves heading towards, I said Senate, that's why we're getting. I understand the feeling. Anyway, we thought we were heading really towards conference committee, and this amendment came up last week. And I really thought that this looked like an outline for how the conference committee could proceed. And it really deals with the interim while we're waiting for a facility to be put into place, a forensic facility to be put into place. So we had a walkthrough with both the corrections and institutions and judiciary committees this morning. We had a few more tweaks, and there's actually going to be one fairly significant change that we actually didn't go over this morning, but from some of the comments in my discussions with Chair Emmons and Vice Chair Burdett, whose amendment this is that there's an emergency rulemaking that's supposed to be in place by the end of this year for the interim forensic program, which will occur in the Department of Corrections facilities. That was to go into effect as soon as the rule was in effect. But now we're going to have that rule, whatever rule comes out of that by December 31st, will not be effective until July 1st of 27, which will give us a session to really see if there's any necessary changes to the underlying statute, particularly in light of whatever that rule is or rules are for the interim program for competency restoration. But again, it's really critical that we have there are individuals who are being held right now in prison who have been found incompetent to stand trial. It takes a while it's often fluid, so there could be more than one evaluation. There's a determination of where they can be released to. So they can be actually held for a very long time, and they are not getting services. And so it's really important that we have something in the interim while we're trying to get a forensic facility put together. I'm happy to answer any questions. Time this evening.
I think what's really important in terms of the interim, DOC is not going to be providing those clinical services. We have assured that. They'll be providing security within the correctional facility because we do have some folks right now who the court has sent there. They're have been deemed or have not been deemed, but incompetent to stand trial. So they're not able to go to trial. They're staying in a correctional facility. So the interim restoration program will be administered through the Agency of Human Services, through DALE and DMH. DOC will not be providing those clinical services, but will be housing folks and providing the security of the facility. The first question is 3 years. The interim is 3 years.
Yeah, the interim goes until July of 29.
Karen Nolan, that's introduction. So I just know there's gonna be a lot of amendments. I don't know if it's gonna be confusing, if you could just talk through how the amendments are gonna come together.
Sure. So there's going to be 2 amendments. Double check. So actually on there's the amendment from appropriations, which is going to be withdrawn because the language related to appropriations is going to be put into what I will call the Burdett Amendment, which is not on the calendar yet. Chair Woods and other members of the Human Services Committee have an amendment which I anticipate will be found favorable, and that modifies the language for the permanent facility, which goes into effect in 29. The Burdett Amendment really is dealing with the language for the interim, and that will be really the second amendment. We'll have to deal with this whenever we get to this.
Questions?
So also for clarity, when the first report comes out, the bill that we report will be the version that originally voted out of House, was voted out of House Judiciary that included corrections and institutions language. But the subsequent amendments are changing that. So the first report is as the bills voted out of our 2 committees. And then the amendments will change that report.
All right, that was fast. Great, thank you. Any questions, please reach out to any of the committee members. So next, we're gonna do H 955 and H, I think it's 949. So education and yield. Start with Chair Collin.
Hi, everybody. Peter Coleman once again. First, a little bit of where we are process-wise with 955. It left the House, went through the Senate Education Committee, went through the Senate Finance Committee. So and it is now on the floor of the Senate literally as we speak. Then the members, it's sort of a bipartisan group of senators have put forth an amendment to it, which is what's being presented right now, which makes some of the changes that you may have heard about in terms of some of the wishes from the governor's office. I'll just maybe do a quick run through of what some of those are. Now, I will say there remain sort of differences within the underlying House bill and the underlying Senate bill that are somewhat minor, but ones that we are aware of. But so in this one, there are a couple of big pieces. One is, I'll step back from this. So I had to cut off here. One is moving the date of the implementation of the new districts and foundation formula up a year from what we had proposed in 955, which was delaying it a year from what is in the current Act 73. This is being done by somewhat compressing the process that's laid out in 955, moving the sort of the vote on new voluntarily merged districts from November to March of 2028. And that would then give everybody a year basically to get up and running and ready to go. Obviously, these are, the schedule that's laid out is doable, but I would call it ambitious and may or may not have to be revisited in the future, depending on how progress continues. They're adding some additional intent language. There is a lot of added language just about making sure that CTE is not being lost in the process of these merger study groups, making sure that they are included with these merger study groups. It's another thing. They also wanted to change the name. Instead of calling them study groups, they're just called merger committees. So you'll see a lot of instances of amendment that are just word changes. There's also a fair bit of language to better prevent having districts that fail to merge into newer, larger districts. We can call them stranded or orphan districts. It is really to try to safeguard against that. It both provides a way for a district that is sort of left behind but would like to be merged to merge, as well as sort of a process for those who are doing their best to not merge. They basically have to prove it, that they can provide for. There's a lot of language in there about you must show that you can provide for all of the things that you must provide for. Special education, CTE transportation, and CTE education. Everything that would go with a regular education. There is some changes to the school construction language that can be explained perhaps by Charlie. What I will say is much of the school construction language continues to be theoretical, as we still don't have a funding mechanism for it. I think I might pause there, see if there's more to add.
So Charlie, do you want to touch on?
Sure. It's cut off?
There you go.
Perfect. Yeah. Back to you.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm Charlie Kimball, representing Woodstock, Reading and Plymouth. So we had in our construct for school construction financing, it'd be state aid with a base of 50% of the school construction cost plus 45% of that school construction cost based on incentives for either consolidation of school governance structures and other criteria. The Senate has changed that to go with a 30% base and 45% incentives. So instead of a 95% funding criteria, it's 75%. And the balance would be raised by supplemental district spending. And these are of actual costs, actual approved costs, I'm sorry. So that requires the secretary to give approval of those costs. And it also says that no school construction aid will be available until three things occur. One is the Agency of Education operationalizes the school construction division. It also says that the treasurer has reported back on what is possible with the bonding authority and also on a state and annual subsidy for school construction. And it has a third thing in there. Anyone? And so there's a third thing in there that's very important and it'll come to me later. So those are some of the processes that are set for school construction. And then do you want to talk about legacy debt?
That what?
Legacy debt?
Yeah, just that it's covered.
Just briefly, they have their own version of legacy debt. Remember, in our construct, it was going, the state would pick up any kind of school construction debt that existed that was taken out, and then the state would be paying for 100% of that. Their construct is 75% of it. So there will be some discussions as to where the other 25% comes from. So that's the Senate proposal on those particular pieces of school construction. Oh, and if a school project is for renovation or expansion to a facility that was built before 1980, then there has to be tests for airborne PCBs.
All right, let's
I
pause there.
would one more thing, in moving up the implementation of the foundation formula by 1 year, it also moves up all of the tax classifications as well. And I will say the House Education Committee will be getting a presentation on whatever passes out of the Senate as we speak at 1, which is to say, hopefully at 1, we'll have posted on our website a side-by-side for differences.
Thank you. Candace White from, representing from Waitsfield. So I have a couple questions. I read through the Senate amendment this weekend. So on construction aid, I read this to go from 20% of debt service coverage to 30% of total project coverage. But that sounded different than what Representative Kimball just described, because that sounded like a pretty big change to propose that we're gonna pay for debt service versus total, a percentage of total project costs.
There's two different sections in the bill, and there's one on school construction debt and one on legacy debt. And what you may be reading there is what was passed in Act 73. And because they're changing, it's a strike all amendment. And so what we had proposed was that 50% and 45, they're presenting 30 and 45. So a difference between for school construction aid, for state aid for school construction, instead of being 95% they're proposing 75%.
Maybe you're talking about the base too.
Yeah, the base is the 30%, which they're talking about, plus the 45. Our base and the other one was 20 plus, back in Act 73 land was 20 and going up to possibly 40%. That's a big difference. I mean, 20 and 40, and we came back in 955 with a proposal for 30 and 45,
Yeah, can we make that
50 and
clear?
45.
Can I try that?
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's both the legacy debt less so, but the new construction, which is what Charlie described with all of the percentages, is it's a capital stack that's made up of a few different state sources. One is imagined to be state bonding, and one is imagined to be local bonding that the state helps with the debt payments on. And then that all builds on an existing school construction program that's still in state law but has been paused. And so the different percentages make up that capital stack, but the overall percentage that's covered in the capital stack is what is reduced slightly in the Senate version. And sort of the mix of the percentages is interesting, and we can look at them on paper together, but it's less important than sort of that the overall amount covered by that stack by the state is a little bit less in the Senate version.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm still a little confused, so I'm gonna try to catch one of you later. My other question was, I saw, I think it was in the third instance of amendment, there was a lot of calling out of individual school districts, like Mount A, Mount Mansfield, districts, unions, and
Yes,
clarify that.
that language, it is confusing the way it is because it's instances of amendment, but that is really to account for the fact that we have 4 independently governed public CTE centers. They are their own school district. And so in naming the school districts within the groupings, it is to include those as well.
Thank you.
Representative Allison Springfield. I have a question about the legacy. 75%. Where are those dollars coming from? And when does that become effective? And how many schools are covered?
I would say that where the funds are going to come from would be from an allocation by the General Assembly, which has not yet been defined. So really, I would say that's why I said earlier, much of this is theoretical until there is either a revenue source or an allocation defined. Some of the other questions here I'm going to pass off.
The Senate version did tighten the language regarding CDAC significantly, and so it's based on a recommendation from CDAC.
So are you thinking of using bonded dollars to pay off debt?
No, because we would never do that because it's terrible practice, Alice.
Right, can't do that.
Take it back.
Thank you for all your work on this. And thanks to our great staff pulling together side by side. What's been really helpful for me has been the timeline graphic that we had. And I'm wondering if we can get our wonderful staff to provide an update of that graphic too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to get that as well posted on the House Education
website when we have the side by side up this afternoon.
I have a
Any
question.
other
Question. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Angela, so, from Wilson, just about that side by side, will it, so now the side, I found it really hard to, I wish they had done a title amendment, the instance of amendment on a gigantic bill is extremely hard to follow. Will a side by side help us? It'll incorporate the amendments and all of that, right?
I think it'll compare what passed out of the House versus what ultimately passes out of the Senate.
Great, thank you.
Another question.
Representative Randall from Burlington. Rep. Cornhead, you talked about the capital stack, you mentioned local bonding, state bonding, and there's a allocation that the future legislature is meant to make. But you also mentioned the existing school construction program that can pause. How is that funded?
It's not, that's why it's paused. So that's all wrapped up into it. It's just the statutory language has multiple percentages listed in it because of how those different programs are all being put together into a capital stack.
That's my question now.
Please do.
So Lori Houghton, construction. So we know that the Senate and the administration have been working together to get something on their side to the floor. It is, as you've been describing, really close to what we passed out. So I'm just curious about where the governor was and where the governor is now.
Sure. So as I'm sure everybody knows, the governor was adamant until recent conversations that the legislature needed to pass mandatory forced mergers. I think that, what we found is that there just simply haven't been the votes for it in the legislature. So the governor, I assume, gave it some thought and has adjusted his thinking and is okay with really moving forward with a voluntary merger process, pretty much as we laid out in our version of 955, and it is not being altered in any way significantly as it passes through the Senate, hopefully.
Any other questions before we go to the yield? All right, so again, 1 o'clock, hopefully it'll pass out of the Senate by then, 1 o'clock. Education, and I think Ways and Means together will be hearing it, and there will be section by section available as soon as we get our hands on it. We'll make sure we get it out to everyone, but it will also be obviously at that fourth page. So now we can talk about the yield.
I feel like I was sneezed. It's like about, anyway, we'll see how that goes. Emily Kornheiser, I don't know if I said that before. Hi. So the yield bill is in a committee of conference. We've met 3 times, something like that. We have another committee of conference scheduled at noon today, which might get rescheduled because the Senate's on the floor. But if it doesn't, we will be meeting. I personally, and I've talked to a few other people, are finding the committee of conference documents really hard to access this year. And I don't know why they seemed easier for me last year, but just wanted to let folks know that if you are looking for documents that I'm going to describe, or you're looking for committee of conference documents, the easiest place to go is actually the committee that is hosting the committee of conference. So in the case of an H bill, it would be the Senate. In the case of a Senate bill, it would be the House. And going onto that committee's website is the easiest way to find committee of conference documents. Maybe everyone knows that but me and Lori. I don't know. Yeah, it seems like you all did it, but there you go. Thank you, Angela. Okay, so yield bill, we are working with, we entered this discussion with 2 very different versions of a yield bill. The Senate spent all of the general fund transfer in a single year in order to lower property taxes for next year, and had a very extreme excess spending threshold at 112% that was going to be active FY28, which is next July.
The House version had no changes to the excess spending threshold and had a 2-year spend of the general fund had for over 2 years because we were worried about next year in addition to the year that's about to start. We, in conversations with the Senate and the administration, we put forward a proposal at the end of the day on Friday to the Senate that use the excess spending threshold to create a ramp to the foundation formula. And so the excess spending threshold in FY 27 would be exactly what it is in current law, 118%, moving to 116.7%. Can round it up to 117 if you want to, for FY 28, and then down to 115.5 in FY 29. And then in FY 30, when the foundation formula would be enacted, it would essentially be 114-ish, which matches the foundation formula that is in current law. There's a lot to be said about apples to apples comparisons between the foundation formula and current education spending. We're not going to get into that today, but all to say, this was seen, we've heard from a lot of stakeholders in this that it's really important that we build a ramp between current law and the foundation formula and using the excess spending threshold, which was very important to the Senate and the administration as a way to get there. We also put in a categorical grant to help build the base a little bit, the lowest spending districts who under the foundation formula see a huge leap in the amount of resources available to them. And right now we're really not able to meet the full needs of the kids in their schools because they're not able to pass larger, higher budgets. And so there's a categorical grant that's included for the lowest spending, highest poverty districts. So bringing some district spending up a little bit and other districts asking them to not have their spending grow quite as fast. There's still growth built into both of them. So that's a proposal we put on the table on Friday. We have a conversation with the Senate scheduled for noon today, where we'll hear what they think of the proposal.
Great. Any questions?
Ooh, there's also a tiny piece with the circuit breaker, which is extra tax relief for super low income folks. It has been set at $47,000 since Act 60 passed. It has never had an inflator added to it. It has never gone up. We are bringing it up to 50 in this bill, in the proposal we put forward as a step forward on this. Something that has not been changed in a long time. It adds extra property tax relief in addition to sort of the regular income yield for those folks who are in that particular income threshold. And it gives relief for municipal taxes in addition to education taxes for folks in that income bracket.
Questions?
Okay, anyone who wants to like look at spreadsheets, Charlie keeps them all in his head. I'm keeping them all in this binder. We're happy to talk. Marty is also on the conference committee and right there and is also happy to talk through the spreadsheets with you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, next up is cannabis. I think it's S-278. We're going to focus mostly on the amendments that have been going through the committee.
Correct. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Representative Navarro, Chair, House Government Operations, Military Affairs. We are talking about the several proposals of amendment to S-278, the annual miscellaneous cannabis bill. So I'm going to start off with the one that is being proposed by Representative Nugent. This proposal of amendment essentially gives the ability for the special event permits. So the issuance of those permits for those events to only occur in municipalities that have already approved a retail license. So only places that have already approved sale of cannabis in their municipality will be able to issue the permits for the special events. And that's pretty much that one in a nutshell.
Have you voted on that?
Yes.
And what was the vote?
11-0-0 was the straw poll. I guess I'll stop there on that one, see if there's any questions. Favorable, yes.
Any questions on that one? Karen?
Representative Kathleen James from Manchester. So I just want to make sure I understand. So if you're a municipality that has already opted in to retail cannabis sales, an event held within your city limits or town limits could apply for a special permit to provide cannabis at a permitted event only if alcohol is not also being sold?
But yes, there is
You have to
actually,
pick one.
no, well, you cannot sell alcohol at it, like an alcohol event permit would be a separate permit.
But you couldn't
Have both.
You couldn't have both.
No, correct, yeah.
Yeah, so the section 5 related to the pilot event program lays out certain requirements that the permittee has to uphold to. So that includes establishing local approval, security plans, insurance, compliance with health and safety rules, and no alcohol sales at the same location.
Okay, and then the pilot, does it sunset at some point? Is that why it's a pilot?
Yeah, it eventually sunsets in 2028.
Thank you.
Candace.
Candace White from Waitsdale. Can you clarify, at these cannabis events, is cannabis being sold? Is cannabis being smoked? What will be happening at these events?
That conversation is actually going to be addressed in a different instance of amendment that we're going to speak to, yes, so that's all being refined in how the new proposal.
Okay.
All right, next is an amendment that I am sponsoring. It does several things. The first instance of amendment is striking section 1 of the current bill, which would have brought the per package milligram purchase limits for edibles from 100 milligrams to 200. So we're striking that entire section and leaving it at current law at 100 milligrams. The second instance of amendment is in and around some of the language that we had pertaining municipal authority for retail establishments. We're striking that entire section. And now what we're doing is it's just a technical cleanup on integrated licenses. We had cleaned up that language for removal of integrated license language in a previous bill in a previous session. And we found a few places where it still existed. So we're removing that just as a housekeeping measure. So the entire section regarding those municipal changes has now been struck. And the third instance is giving the CCB administrative enforcement penalty authority for violations to be able to move forward with filing a civil collection action in any superior court. They're able to move forward with administrative processes and punitive measures, but this gives them the ability to actually enforce the penalties and move forward with court action. And then finally, the fourth instance has to do with the fee reduction language for outdoor cultivators. There was a monetary contingency of $105,000 in there to help offset the fee reductions. The requirement of that money is being removed, but this is not going to take effect until 2027. So that provides time for there to be more conversations about how that money will be backfilled on the fee reductions.
Okay, and that vote was?
Straw poll favorable 10-0-1.
Okay, any questions on that one?
Scott Campbell from St. Johnsburg. Can you talk a little bit more about the integrated licenses? I noticed in the bill that they were all of them. I thought it was just in this bill when that happened, but apparently not. Apparently have an earlier bill.
Yes, that happened in a previous bill, in a previous section, and then in this municipal language that we were,
Start the whole thing.
it's throughout the whole bill. Oh, okay.
Why don't we let Lucy answer?
The repeal of the integrated license is repealed throughout all of S 278. The CCPSD there possibly.
Who's the CC?
The Cannabis Control Board.
Yeah. And just explain a little bit about what the integrated license was and why it's being repealed.
The integrated license was for people to be able to have licenses for cultivation, manufacturing, and retail. And so you keep those bifurcated to like prevent sort of, having your fires in all of the fires. That it is being walked back, they're not issued anymore. It's an obsolete structure. We're removing statutes.
So now, somebody who wants to be a grower and a processor and a retailer has to buy those 3 licenses. Is that what, or can you only get one of those licenses?
My understanding is it's one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Apologize for, in the original bill, they were, we talked about edibles, and we went back to how it is now, and then the quantity from 1 ounce to 2 ounces, what happened to that?
The purchase and possession limits are as drafted in the proposal right now, moving up from 1 ounce to 2 ounces.
Can you explain why?
So with that, there's a couple of pieces to that. There's neighboring states that are doing in and around the same thing, but one of the other components of that is with the purchase limits for the drinks, the edibles, things of that nature. This new structure of the purchase and possession limits was deemed necessary to recalibrate how they could set standards for purchase limits on those other products. When this original structure was put into place, that product line was nowhere near what it was now or what it is now. So this is gonna help them hone in purchase limits on the range of the other products.
Anyone else? All right, next one.
I'll talk about the Taglivia amendment. Currently, it proposes to strike section 5, which I'll remind folks. Section 5 creates the event pilot program, which allows the Cannabis Control Board to issue to any licensee, so that's retail, cultivators, manufacturers, 5 public cannabis event permits annually, or 5 pilot and or 5 private event permits annually. And this would also allow consumption at these events. As I listed earlier, the requirements include local approval, security plans, insurance, compliance with health and safety rules, and no alcohol sales at the same location. And the pilot is set to expire in 2028. We have been collaborating with Representative Taglivia, and him and myself will be proposing a substitute amendment, which will look to create only 10 public event permits for licensed retail establishments and remove public consumption. And we have not had a struggle yet, but the rest of section 5 will remain intact.
Questions on that? Emily has one.
Kathleen James from Manchester. So I'm just trying to picture what this looks like. So at a wedding, is that the kind of event? Would that be sort of a qualifying event? I'm trying to imagine, like at a wedding, could you give away alcohol and sell cannabis? I'm just trying to figure out I can't quite picture how this all works.
Yeah, our understanding is that no, if for example, at a wedding were to have a private event permit for cannabis, you would have to only have cannabis and not have a liquor license to serve alcohol. But in this amendment that Representative Taglivia and I are proposing, it would only propose public events. So get the idea of weddings out of my head.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the Taglivia amendment and the new one that you're proposing together further limits this pilot?
Yeah, it looks to just take a smaller step forward.
And is Representative, am I remembering right, that Representative Tagliavio is the state representative who wanted to expand events on farms?
Yeah.
How was that? Thank you, great, okay, I feel much better about that then, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Candace Waitsfield. Okay, so if the Tagliavia Boyden amendment passes, there will be 5 of special event permits.
And special event
10,
permits for public events.
where cannabis is sold but not consumed.
Yes, only for retail establishments.
And if that amendment fails, then it would revert to 10 events where consumption is allowed.
It would revert to the original section 5, where it specifies that there can be 5 public events, 5 private events, and public consumption is allowed.
Okay, and I'm kind of envisioning this like the Burlington Beer Festival, but it's like the Burlington Weed Festival, for example.
Yeah, and think like retail.
Any other, yeah.
40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Reverend Senator from Caucus Fair. But I believe with alcohol, a person can serve the alcohol, can serve someone who's intoxicated. I'm just wondering how that would be managed with these festivals in terms of people leaving and driving home. How would you determine that they would be safe to drive?
So with the, you're correct, with the Tagliavia Boyden amendment, there would be no consumption allowed. So they would only be able to purchase more of like a farmer's market format as opposed to a consumption format like a Brewers Fest.
We don't want that.
There will be, if this amendment passes, there will be no consumption at any events.
So when are you hearing that amendment?
After lunch.
After lunch, okay, great.
Senator Carol Odie from Chipman 18. Who will pay for the security and policing at the festivals?
It would be part of the structure of the permittee, so they need to have all of this secured in order for their permit to be issued. And insurance is part of that as well.
Okay, great. More to come on this once they hear the amendment. Thank you very much. All right, Representative Priestley is going to come up and talk about S71, data privacy that passed out of Commerce Friday evening on an 11-0 vote.
Thank you. So this is a strike-all amendment. It applies to businesses processing data of 35,000 Vermonters or more. If somebody's processing sensitive data or selling data, it lowers the threshold to 3,000 consumers or more. Limits the data collection to what's necessary for a disclosed purpose. Requires consent before processing or selling sensitive data. Bans targeted ads and data sales targeting anyone under 18. Gives consumers the right to request access to correction of or deletion of their data. Gives consumers the right to opt out of data sales and targeted advertising. Prohibits geofencing within 1,850 foot radius of health, mental health, and reproductive health facilities. Takes effect January 1st, 2028, and AG only enforcement with a cure period through June of 2029.
That's fast.
Those are the highlights. It is a long bill, but that's a bill.
Questions? No questions? It will probably be on the floor later today. All right, if you come up with questions, please reach out to someone on the committee. And last but not least, we're going to do a quick 606 with Representative Arsenault. Sorry. Thank you, Angela Arsenault from Williston. H606 is we received a Senate proposal of amendment that completely eliminated the bill as passed out of the House. So
just a heads up that the, floor report will be slightly longer than your average Senate proposal of amendment, but I'm still trying to keep it quite brief and high level. So I'll do the same now. What the proposal of amendment does is establish, so currently, in current law, we have a couple of cases in which a court can order that firearms are surrendered. Those are relief from abuse cases involving domestic violence and also extreme risk protection orders, or ERPOs. So we're dealing with RFAs and ERPOs. The law exists, the ability for a court to order relinquishment exists, but there's really no process or structure holding up the law. So that is what 606 builds. It builds more clarity into the process and proposing more for folks who are having to surrender their firearms, and also for victims who have done a very brave and often dangerous work of seeking a relief from abuse order. So we have some clarification regarding third-party surrender or third-party relinquishment, which is an option, but not a great one. That is when someone other than law enforcement or a here's another acronym for you, federally licensed firearms dealers are referred to as FFLs, which actually stands for Federal Firearms Licensee. Right now, law enforcement can hold relinquished firearms, as can a participating licensee, federal FFL. A third party may also hold relinquished firearms, but there's no process to ensure that that is safe. So what this bill lays out is a requirement that there be a hearing if there's a request that a third party hold on to firearms in cases of relinquishment or surrender order. There has to be a hearing. The person has to come before the court, and they have to be deemed to be not a prohibited person, which is really important. And they have to sign an affidavit saying that they understand the responsibility that they're accepting. They also have to undergo a background check. So these are really important safeguards that are not currently in place that this bill sets out. We also built in some additional, I would say, safeguards for the FFLs who were often not participating in storage because they didn't receive the same immunity that law enforcement agencies receive for storage of firearms. So now they're going to be, they'll receive the same immunity in the, I would say, rare case that a firearm is damaged or somehow destroyed while being stored, as long as the law enforcement agency and FFL has followed the procedure, has documented everything as laid out in this process, they will not be liable for that damage. And then the other element that we're adding in is clarity around the sale of relinquished firearms. So FFL, say you're a gun store owner and you're holding on to, and I have to keep reminding myself because I don't think about it this way, but some folks own a lot of guns. And so if you have to relinquish firearms by court order, you have to relinquish all of your firearms. And so storage space is actually an issue. Many law enforcement agencies, small police departments, they don't have places to store all these guns. Federal firearms licensees might have more capacity to do that. We want to encourage them to participate in this process. So we're clearing up some confusion around what happens if the order ends. The firearms may be returned to the person who is subject to the surrender order, but they don't come back and get them. So now we're in the bill, it's clarifying that gun store owner and I mean, law enforcement has a slightly different process, I believe, but the gun store owner can sell those guns and retain the proceeds from the sale of the firearms. There is also built into this process, as laid out in the bill, a very clear requirement for notice. You have to make efforts to notify the person before you can sell their guns. There's a 90-day period during which, you can't sell the guns and you have to try to reach the person and get them to come pick up their guns. Importantly, one last thing, this bill lays out a process by which victims, so particularly in the case of a relief from abuse order, victims will be notified prior to the release of the firearms back to the person who had to surrender them. Right now, that is not a requirement, and so it's an important piece. And then there's also a whole section of the bill that deals with the Law Enforcement Advisory Board writing a policy for law enforcement agencies to follow. So we're building, we have the law, and now we're building the framework, and then we're also tasking the LEAB with coming up with a policy to support the framework.
Questions? That's.
Thank you, Doug Bishop of Colchester. This is probably most likely focused on the third-party holders, potential for some third-party holder. If that person relinquishes the weapon prematurely, is there any liability attached to that?
Yes. In existing law, there is already. Yeah, you can't say you're gonna hold on to a gun has been ordered to be surrendered, or firearms that have been ordered to be surrendered, and then surreptitiously, return the firearms to the person who is subject to the order. There is liability if you do that. And especially, if you do that and you're caught, and especially if harm results. And I will remind folks that in Vermont, firearms are the leading cause of death in domestic homicides. And importantly, this bill does not create any new firearms restrictions. It's simply setting up a process to support laws that are already in place.
Yeah. This is Scott Campbell, so you mentioned the strike all, and the language that was in 606 is now gone. That it was making guns rapid fire shooter. And what happened to that language?
That language was moved by Senate Judiciary into a Senate bill, S 329, I believe, which is the prohibition on guns in bars. So now there's a bill on our wall that has the prohibition on guns in bars, as well as everything that was in our previous 606.
So that bill's now in your committee, in
It is.
Judiciary. And any idea what's going to happen with that?
I have a good idea that nothing will happen with it this year.
Thank you.
Angela, what was?
The vote out of our committee was, I'm doing some math. Just a minute. I think we had one not voting, so that moves us down to 10, and I think it was 6-4-1.
Any other questions? All right, great, thank you.